Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Grace Robinson, Director of the Gadsden Arts Center and Museum, and pleased to be here talking with some of our award winners from the Art in Gadsden Juried Exhibition of Fine Art. This is our 33rd year, and we are pleased to be able to say we've never missed a year of Art in Gadsden, even last year when many things were shut down. I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors who made this exhibition and our awards for artists possible. So this is presented in partnership with Quincy Main Street, and they're a very valuable partner in helping to revitalize downtown Quincy. This is presented by Thomas Howell Ferguson, TDS Telecom, sponsored by Lines, Hinson and Lines and Black Fig. And we appreciate our award sponsors, again, who made it possible to offer very strong awards for our artists. Doug Crowley Insurance Services, Capital City Bank, Iron Oak Wealth Management, and Full Earth Farm. So thank you so much to all of these sponsors, as well as our granting organizations that help with programs and general operations at Gadsden Arts. Thank you to all of these for supporting our programs. So we were very fortunate to have a distinguished juror for the 33rd Art in Gadsden, and she was such a pleasure to work with. And that is Aja Roche, who is gallery director at the Foster Tanner Fine Arts Gallery on campus at FAMU, Florida A&M University, and she teaches museum studies courses there. She's an internship host for museum studies and arts administration students. She's curated exhibitions for multiple cultural venues in our area, like 621 Gallery, the Meek Eaton Black Archives, and the Havana History and Heritage Society. Aja is finishing her doctorate degree at Florida State University. She completed her BA in Fine Arts from FAMU and her master's in interdisciplinary studies from New York University. So she is very, very accomplished in the field. And again, we were so fortunate to have her jury this show. She spent days previewing the artwork before she came to judge. She spent a day on site with us, and then she gave a talk about the work afterwards, and we'll share some of her comments tonight. So I'd like to start by inviting you to type any questions that you might have of any of our artists in the chat. And then Angie or I will moderate those questions as we proceed. And we'd like to start by talking about our third place award winner. And he could not be with us this evening, so he has answered some questions in advance so that Angie and I can share those and talk about his work. So third place, sponsored by Full Earth Farm, went to Matt Brady for his photograph entitled Albrecht Fog, made in 2020. And that is a silver gelatin print that is fairly small. It's about 10 by 10 inches. And of that piece, our jurors said that it's unassuming in scale, but so alluring in its moody, even melancholy dispositions. She was just really drawn by the emotive power of this piece. So I will ask Angie to join me. I will ask the questions, and Angie's going to share with you some of Matthew Brady's comments. So our first question of Matt was, the moment captured in the painting is really wonderful. Can you talk about what attracted you to this image? And was this from an event in your life?
Matt says, we had passed by this farm many times in our travels within the Auvergne region of France. And I had taken a number of photographs of this scene under various lighting conditions. And on this particular morning, we were headed out from our base in Languedoc, a town famous for its knives. And as we descended into the farm's small valley, the farm was shrouded in a thick fog. Taking out my medium format film camera and tripod, I took 5 photographs over a period of 20 or 30 minutes as the fog slowly lifted. Albrecht Fog was one of those images.
So can you tell us about the day that the photo was taken? Was this a predetermined photograph location for you?
So like you said, we were just out to explore what we considered to be a particularly wild and rugged yet beautiful area of France. Fortuitous happenstance that I brought my camera and a small farm and convective fog together.
So your photography practice has had a series of starts and stops over the years. How have brief periods away from the medium helped you improve when you return to photography?
Well, I never really left photography, but I did leave the business after moving to Florida. I continued working in my darkroom, experimenting with printing materials, printing family photos, and doing the occasional portrait. And it was after I retired that I got back to the medium and large format cameras, making photographs that I would hope would get into art shows like Art in Gadsden.
So much of your work appears to be landscapes. What role does your history working as a city planner play in your selection of your subject matter?
Truth to tell, my partner and I started out as wedding and event photographers in Southern Connecticut. I can only recall 2 or 3 cityscape projects. My time in urban planning was more in the specialty area of geospatial analysis and computer mapping, but I was never very far from a camera and almost always carried the marvelous Rollei 35 with me. My tendency is to photograph things that my mind's eye sees are interesting. For the past several years, interesting landscapes like Albrecht fog seem to be what attract my attention, along with the centuries-old buildings in Europe.
So why black and white photography?
Well, color isn't everything. In my view, a black and white photograph can convey a great deal more visual drama than one in color. I believe that had Albrecht fog been a color photo, it would have been just another ho-hum picture. With a background in computer science as well as analog photography, I tend to look on digital images and inkjet printing as computer drawings rather than photographs. Black and white photography is a hands-on analog process. No computers, no inkjet printers, no Lightroom or Photoshop. To me, it's the challenge of making a silver gelatin print in my darkroom that depicts the image as I envisioned it through the lens of my camera.
So if we can move back to the photograph, to Matt's award-winning photograph, the barn is very ominous looking in this photograph. So we asked Matt how he created such a moody composition, such a moody feeling.
Well, Mother Nature in a foggy morning helped a great deal. In my mind's eye, I saw a dark, moody print and exposed the film to create a darker, low contrast negative. I also used a developer that enhanced the grain of the film while holding the contrast of the negative to the desired level. The final step was in the darkroom, printing on a lower contrast grade of traditional fiber-based paper to preserve the mood. So a lot of things that went into it.
I'll tell you, traditional film photographers are really a crafts person's mentality. They really love the process. So who are artists that inspire Matthew Brady?
Well, my wife, Wendy DeVario, for sure. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, and I'm always amazed at the work she does. Photographers would have to include Ezra Stoller and Bill Morris, French photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson, Alfred Stieglitz, Edward Weston, and of course, Ansel Adams and Fred Archer.
And last, we asked Matt where people can find more of his work.
And at the moment, at Gadsden Arts.
Very good. And we're thinking of Matt, he's dealing with a health issue, so he could not be with us tonight. So keeping him in our thoughts. So moving on to second place award winner, Angie, were you going to introduce that?
Yes.
Absolutely, and our artist.
This is Sal Guastella. Grace, would you actually mind reading what the juror said about Sal's work?
Not at all. So Aja said, what are the 2 of the most joyful things in life? Dogs and springtime. I very much appreciate the kinetic feeling of the bright colors and patterns that seem to celebrate the beauty of life.
So the second place award has gone to Pero de mi Primavera from 2019. This mixed media piece is on the larger side, it's 36 by 24. So it's very hard to miss in the gallery. Sal, welcome. We're so excited that you're here to tell us more about your piece. So this is such a lighthearted and joyful painting, as Aja was obviously captivated by it. Can you tell us what inspired you to combine dogs with springtime in such a pleasant way?
I love animals and I love dogs. and springtime is the beginning of everything. And I've always had animals. I've always had dogs and cats and pets. So to me, combining the two was kind of, it was very common sense. It was like, that's what, what life is about. I mean, enjoying an animal at the same time that you enjoy the beginning of a whole season of spring, it's a no-brainer. It's really cool. It's really cool.
And what many of us who are just looking at it on a screen can't really tell, but this is very much a relief piece. So it's mixed media because this is not a flat surface. Can you tell us, describe a little bit more about the relief part of the piece?
Yeah, I started painting. I mean, I'm talking about in the late 1960s. I started painting, but I decided that what I liked was the relief part of it. But I'm not a sculptor. I have no clue how to sculpt something. Yeah. So I just did kind of these relief things, and I started adding things to the paper and adding things to the canvas, and then I enjoyed it, and that was part of it. It's like I enjoyed it. It was kind of like being a kid again, making toys or creating something that didn't exist before, and so it was fun to do, and I couldn't go wrong. I mean, in art you can't go wrong. When people tell you that's not a successful piece or something, I mean, I don't know what that means. To me, any artist that does anything is successful, and that's what's cool. What's cool is that it's a fact of doing, not thinking, but doing, and that's what's fun. That's what's fun. It's just you can't go wrong. You just start gluing things and start thinking about things, and it all comes together sooner or later.
I love that.
You might not love the piece. You might not love the piece, but you'll go, oh, I'll do another one.
I think that's a very positive outlook, and something that I hope everybody thinks. Art is for everyone, and everyone can make art. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
So tell me, how did your migration from Cuba as a child affect elements in your work? For instance, color palette or subject matter, or did it?
Yeah, of course. I came to the United States when I was turning 9 years old. So I have that cultural background in Cuba, and very colorful, of course, because, it's a Caribbean kind of thing with African influence and the music. I mean, I paint by music. I mean, I cannot paint without having music in my studio. So I enjoy that fact of carnival. And I remember the carnival in Cuba when I was 8 years old or even younger. I just remember the colorful ambiance that I lived in, even when we went to church, which I hated, because it was like too long, and it's like this guy was talking and that, but I would look at all the statues and all the incredible decorations. It was to me, it was unbelievable that was made by people. I didn't realize how awful the history of it was, but as a young kid, you don't see that. You just see this incredible embellishment of everything, and everything that I was surrounded with was very colorful, including music and food, and of course anything that was visual. So that really that did it for me. That I love color, and I love the fact that I could just put down a color and not have to explain it.
So in your bio, you talk about painting what you love most and find personally upsetting. So can you tell us about the subjects that fall into both categories?
Well, I have, I paint, it's like, I paint things I love, but I also paint things I hate. And, and there's people that will relate to that and will will want to watch and look at and maybe even purchase paintings that are a little tougher, a little tougher. I remember I was doing an art show, boy, in like 1971 in Winter Park, and this lady came by, and she looked at my booth and she goes, "Oh, I love that painting. I'm going to buy it. I'll buy that painting." And I'll say, "Okay, so do you know what that painting is about?" And she goes, "Oh, it's just beautiful. It's a lot of color." And she goes, "I want it for my kid's room." And I said, "Ma'am, that's a run over dog." I did a painting that was about a run over dog in Sweetwater in like 1970. And it was grotesque, but it was so colorful that she didn't see the grotesque part. She just saw the color. So actually, one of those crazy things, I talked her out of buying the piece. So I do a lot of pieces that are very colorful, but people mistakenly look at it as, "Oh, that's cartoony, that's cute." And then they start looking at it and go, "Oh my God, wait a minute, that's not so cute." So I can get away with a lot of things that I do, enveloped in the color and cartoony kind of style that I've always done. Where other people just put it in your face, I get a little more, I get a little more distance out of my paintings, because people have to really look at things, and realize that that's not that pretty of a thing. That's a real statement regarding something that I do dislike or not like. But I also do paintings that because I'm very positive, so I like I like to do paintings that are that thrill me, that I like to look at and rejoice over what I'm doing. So it's cool. I can do anything, and that's the thing about art. You can do anything.
Well, so tell me, who are some artists who inspire you?
Oh, geez. I started, I wrote it. I went, okay. So that question, I went, oh, and I started to write down, and I went, oh my God. I mean, I can't. I can't. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was Mary Cassatt, for her courage to be able to paint at a time that only men were painting and the women were only being of models. So she had this courage to say, "Oh, I'm going to paint, and I'm going to try and get my paintings, with the Impressionists out there." But I mean, Walt Disney, I love cartoons and toys, so that had a lot to do with it. But I'm talking about, I love a lot of stuff that I don't do. I mean, Kandinsky, I have Edward Munch, Paul Klee. I mean, I wrote Georgia O'Keeffe, but I would never paint like Georgia O'Keeffe, but I love her paintings. Frida Kahlo, of course, Dali, because of surrealism. Christo, I loved Christo's, curtains and embellishing, and covering mountains and things like that. Jackson Pollock for having the courage to throw paint down and that kind of stuff, and Helen Frankenthaler, that was married to Motherwell, but I like Frankenthaler better. Rauschenberg and Warhol, of course, in the 60s. So the stuff that I love might not have anything to do with the stuff that I do. I don't know if if that's clear.
Absolutely.
I can love I can love pottery, but I don't do pottery. But I can love a fired, dark fired or pottery that has these incredible glazes, but I don't do that. So it's kind of cool to be kind of influenced by a lot of things, but not picking one and saying, "Oh, I want to paint like that person." You know, that's a mistake that a lot of people do. To enjoy all this stuff and then to do what you do, and of course you're gonna pick pieces from here and there about that, but it's not just I love the way that person paints, so I'm going to paint like that person. That's a huge mistake. But I love how that person paints. I have no clue how to do any of that stuff, but I still love how that person paints, and I'm going to do what I do and maybe get a little influenced by that person a little bit, you know, that kind of stuff.
You know, inspiration can come from anywhere. So
From anywhere. Exactly.
So I just want a last question for you. Where can we find more of your work?
Nowhere, because I've done that. I've done the galleries. I've tons of galleries. All over the country. I've done the shows. I've done one-person shows. I've done all that stuff. And I had a change of life, about 20 years ago. So I closed my studio, and I started teaching. Not teaching art, even though I had a degree in art. I taught language. And I got a master's in teaching foreign language. So I put all my emphasis on that. But I didn't paint for 20 years. And I've just, in the last few years, started to paint, and I still have my studio. My studio is in Woodville. So I still have my studio, and I'm working to get my studio back up, after 20 years of not picking up a brush. So I don't have any interest in anything except painting. And I told an ex-student of mine that is a up-and-coming artist, and I told him, don't forget, it's the journey, not the destination. Because that's what I always, remembered. It was the journey. Whether I sold pieces or I didn't sell pieces, or whether I had a gallery opening, a one-person show, or I had a group show and I didn't sell anything, or I sold something, it was the whole process of painting, and I was going to continue to paint. So now I'm back. In the last couple of years, I'm starting to paint again. So I have no desire to have my work anywhere. It sounds weird, but I don't have any interest in selling my work.
I don't think it's weird at all. I think that, art is an expression of our human condition, and it doesn't necessarily, you're not doing it for anyone other than yourself. And I will say that you are in our artist guild, and we do have your work on display occasionally in our guild exhibition. So you can see it at Gadsden Arts sometimes.
Oh, yes, you're right. You're right. That's about the only place you can see it. That's fun. And I love doing it. I love painting. So,
Well, it shows. You can really tell it in your work. I think it really comes through in your paintings. So thank you so much, Sal. That was really interesting. And I'm gonna give it back to Grace now.
So Sal, thank you. That was really interesting. And I'm grateful to you for being a part of Gadsden Arts. Thank you so much. So I'm pleased to introduce our first place award winner. And this is sponsored by Capital City Bank. It is for this beautiful watercolor entitled Dripping in the Fronds from 2019, a medium-sized piece, about 20 by 30 inches. And of this piece, our juror said, this sculpture feels like, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong piece. Hang on a second. This piece, Aja said, Dripping in the Fronds is a masterpiece in the true definition of the word. The beauty of this painting is threefold for me. The lovely light and shadow throughout the painting, the crisp lines the artist has created, and the great composition. And I have to tell you, Sherry, that this piece was one of the ones that initially spoke to me when I first walked into the gallery to see everything installed and lit.
Thank you.
So I'd love to ask you some questions about it and about your work as an artist. So in your artist bio, you mentioned that you've been interested in depicting wildlife since your graduate thesis exhibition in 1978. How have some of your ideas or approaches to the subject changed since then?
Yeah, when I was in college, we were encouraged to paint large. I painted 4 by 6 feet, 8 by 10 feet, I think was my largest one. I used acrylic paint, and I mostly painted jungle scenes where I either made up animals and plants or imagined them, put them into scenes that were not very realistic, but just out of my mind. And then I also looked up, whatever details I needed of the animals in reference books, because this was in the 70s and I didn't have a lot of access. I didn't have a digital camera. I didn't have a lot of access to see what everything looked like. I did things like, I had campfires that were in day glow with rhinos gathered around the campfire and the glow reflected in the horns. And I did like a marabou stork looking over a mountain landscape in the back, and looking at a monkey. And these were pretty much 2-dimensional. They were very flat shaped, and they had a stylized to them. So I didn't paint all when I worked. So for almost 40 years, I did not paint at all. And when I retired, I went to a couple shows by the Tallahassee Watercolor Society, and I was really inspired by the work and the luminosity of the colors. And I decided, I wanted to work in watercolor. And after a few workshops, I started painting. This was about 6 years ago. My painting is quite different now. I bought a really good camera and a lens, and I spend a lot of time at places where animals are, like rookeries and zoos and wildlife preserves. I go to countries that have animals, like the Galapagos, Costa Rica. I'm going to Kenya in October. And the animals I pick now are the animals I show now are very up close and personal. They're more like the work that I did in college was more like a landscape, and these are more like portraits of the animal. So there's quite a few differences.
So one thing I noticed about your work, and I can see it in these examples as well, the work in the museum, is you have this very, very bright sense of light, this just brilliant sense of light in your pieces. Can you talk about that?
Well, I really look for images that have a strong sense of dark and light, because I like the focus to really come out at you. Like in the bird's head and neck are very bright against the dark fronds. So the background kind of frames the bird in that case. And when I take photographs, I look for that, but I also manipulate photographs and manipulate my painting to be what I want it. And so I push the color up, I push the light up, and the dark's darker. So, if you were to see the regular photograph of this, it wouldn't be the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you've kind of answered the next question. So your images, your paintings are very realistic visually. They're photo-like, and you've kind of answered this already, I think, but so why not take a photograph?
Well, I think there's a different quality there's a physical quality to a painting that I just don't think you get in a photograph. Photographs can be manipulated in post-processing to make it look however they want, but I don't think you see the drips. I don't think you see the blossoms. I don't think you see the characteristics of the paint as in a real painting. And there's a style that most artists have, and that's generally not available in a photograph. I mean, a lot of what I do is little masking of repetition of patterns. And I guess maybe you could get that in a photograph, but I don't think so. I think there's just a different physical quality. You get to see some of the work by the artist. You want to see the struggle, the dripping of the birds, the color in the bird and the dripping of that through the fronds. I just don't think you get that in a photograph.
Yeah, I can see that. So, so how do you consciously use color to create a connection between the viewer and the animal, or between you and the animal, some kind of emotional feeling with this?
Yeah, and I think color is emotional. We all respond to it on an emotional level. I think your response is different if you see vivid colors or if they're muted. I choose very vibrant colors. I'd like to get the viewer's attention. And, I like to change the color or heighten it in many cases. I've painted frigate birds that are black, you know, bright iridescent blues and greens. You know, I painted rosette spoonbills. I don't deter too much because they have such a brilliant color scheme anyway, but a lot of the color I have, you know, tries to heighten it, get the viewer's attention, and, you know, have some understanding of the bird, you know, or the bird or the animal through the color, and to hold the viewer's interest.
Well, I also noticed in your compositions with the spoonbill and the American alligator, some of your subjects are looking right at the viewer.
Yeah.
So that
the
helps
eye is
your attention.
Yeah, the eye, you know, is often the focus, you know, and if you can get that looking at the viewer, it's very, it's something you can't hardly ignore.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, so who are some artists that inspire you in your work, if any?
Well, I'm a fan of Carol Carter. I met her 2 years ago at the Florida Watercolor Society. I had a one-on-one session with her. She, you know, we had an opportunity to submit some of our images to her, and she reviewed those. And so we talked for about an hour, and I was really inspired by her. She did demos at the conference, and then later I took a workshop from her. She's a very strong women artist, and she does, her work is entirely different from mine, but I really admire it. It's very fluid, and even though, like, I'm really about a lot of these details, she's not very detailed, but in these big, brilliant washes, she captures the essence of the thing she's painting. And she did this whole exhibition in the pandemic that was quite emotional. And so I just think she's a very strong women artist, and I kind of follow her right now.
Fantastic. So, so other than Gadsden Arts, where can people find more of your work?
Well, I have 2 paintings at City Hall in the Brushstrokes exhibition. I have 1 painting that will be in the Florida Watercolor Society's exhibition in Coral Springs in September. I'm also in the 10 Women Artists in Tallahassee, and we display our work at iAssociates. And then I do have a Facebook page, Sherry Allen Watercolors.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for talking with me. Your work is really stunning.
Thank you.
Really, really. So let me pass the mic back to Angie, and she will introduce our Best of Show award-winning artist.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, before we go away to talk about our Best in Show, is that you can't really tell from the pictures on the screen, but Sherry, your work has the shimmery quality to it, and it's just, I mean, it really glows in the gallery, and it's just something that is so great to be able to see in person. If people are able to make it to the museum, the show is open through September 18th, so there's still time, and I love that about your work.
Thank you.
Okay, so our Best in Show Award winner, sponsored by Doug Crowley Insurance Services, goes to a sculpture this year. It is Behind the Facade by Mark Georgiades, created this year out of welded steel cut nails. And I just have a fun thought behind, am I not screen sharing? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, you guys.
It's hard.
Would that be helpful? Would you like me to screen share? I can do that. I mean, I don't know. I'm just sitting here chatting away. Good. Are we good on
yeah,
screen
we're good.
sharing now? Okay. So sorry about that. You know, we're so excited to see this piece, and I will ask Grace if you will read Aja's
Sure.
statement real quick, and then I'll continue blabbering.
Absolutely. So Aja said of this piece, "This sculpture feels like a study in dualities, and that really intrigued me. This work is both mysterious and inviting, using masculine media and depicting a feminine form, the hard exterior and the visible transparent interior. These binary dynamics are executed so effortlessly. While looking at this sculpture, I also asked myself if she's putting her mask on or taking it off."
There's a lot that goes into this piece, and I think Aja was really attracted to so many aspects of it. And I have just a little fun fact about this piece that, you know, a while ago, I was cleaning out things at the museum and I found this bag of old steel nails that was probably left over from the hardware store days of Bell and Bates. And I thought, what am I going to do with these old nails? You know, and Mark helps us from time to time with lots of various tasks around the museum. And I said, Mark, do you have any usage for these nails? And he said, yeah, sure, I'll do something. And then I was so excited when I saw what he created. It was just so fascinating. So Mark, we're so excited to talk to you today. And you know, seeing this new work, we've exhibited your work before, and it's neat to see these figurative sculptures. Now, can you tell me what it is about the figure or the human condition or form that interests you?
I've always been intrigued with the human form. I mean, I come from a mechanical background. I worked as a mechanic all my life, and I just see the human form as just the ultimate machine. And I'm just very intrigued with it. You know, the way the bones, the muscles, the tendons, the skin, everything connects together to make this just fabulous form, and it's just intriguing to me. I like living. I like to work with living things, not only, you know, people, human forms, but I like, you know, animals and bugs and all sorts of living creatures. I just find it very intriguing to work with these.
So that kind of goes into, so you know, you worked as a mechanic, and you said that working as a mechanic has influenced your art making in terms of you like working on things that are moving or things that are living.
Yes, I guess you know, there's more emotion to something that's living instead of working with you know, an object that's not. I mean, I have done sculpture before, but I've never, you know, I want to create something that has some sort of mood and feeling, you know, that creates a mood. And to me, it's hard to do with something that's not a living, you know, creature.
Well, so on this piece, speaking of, you know, working on something that's living or not, so can you tell me about the decision to use this kind of more masculine media, the hardware, the nails, to depict this very feminine form, and why?
What I wanted to do with this sculpture is I used a store mannequin for my initial form because I wanted a generic form, but I wanted it female, somewhat female, somewhat almost androgynous. It's kind of, I didn't want to overemphasize the female features, but I wanted a tall, kind of a thin, you know, like a generic, you know, just a generic form. So the mannequin was perfect for that. And I wanted to, like, I think I've told you before, I've used the word edgy. I'm not sure that's the right word, but I like to use material that is sharp, somewhat dangerous, you know, somewhat hard, cold, but use those materials to make something that's you know, like the human form, like the female or the, you know, the actual piece that I made. And I'm not sure if I'm conveying that right.
No, I think I understand what you're saying in terms of using something that is very hard. I'm showing some other examples here. You know, these are all living, you know, capturing what are living forms, the horse and the wasp and the the crow and the fairy. These are all things that would move. And so you're using a very static form, but there's still a lot of movement in all of the pieces, even if they are static. And so you're able to do that with this kind of harder material, the metals. And I think it's really interesting, there is that kind of concept of duality between the hardness and then still capturing movement, and especially in the figure, making it look so delicate with something that is, hardware, essentially hardware is nails, and delicate and light. And, we noticed the very specific things that you chose to leave empty. It's kind of hard to tell from the picture, but if you see it in person, the arm isn't, you didn't choose to close the arm all the way up or the elbows or all the legs. Like there's a lot of space in between. And so I think it's really kind of interesting that you do that. And, I did want to ask, like what Aja said, is she taking the mask on? Is she putting the mask on, or is she taking it off?
Well, that's the whole question. I wanted to leave that up to the person viewing the sculpture. And it kind of goes back, and I think I told you this before, there was an old Japanese saying that, we have three faces, and the first face is the face that we show in public, who we are in public. Your second face is the face that we are around our family. Who are we around our family? We're a different person than we are when we're out and about around, in public around other people. And then the third face is who we see when we look in the mirror. When we look in the mirror, that's the face nobody really knows and nobody really sees. And to me, I was trying to portray that with pulling the face away, maybe the outside, the mask was the face in public. In between was somewhat the face, at home, and then, the open, partial open head was, what we are at home. I mean, by ourselves. So I just wanted to leave it up to, the person viewing it as to how they felt about it. And as far as the spaces that I didn't fill in, that I try to leave negative space like that so your eye kind of follows and fills it in itself. I think it would be less interesting if I completely filled everything in and made it, a complete sculpture. If you look at some of my other ones, the horse, if you look at it to the side, the whole back end of the horse is missing, but yet your eye follows the curve around and kind of fills it in itself. And as far as movement, I like to use a lot of wire and stuff that's not normally, the crow, I focused on the head and the beak of the crow, and the rest just kind of flowed behind it. It's as if the crow was moving, and that was the wind coming behind him. So
I think that does show, it comes across for sure. And so tell me a little bit about your process. How do you go about creating these? I know with the nails, you used the mannequin form to help you get that shape you wanted, but what about in these other instances? Are you just kind of seeing this in your mind's eye and shaping them out?
Well, sometimes I will look up what the skeletal form of one of these objects are and kind of go from there, and I'll kind of make a very basic skeletal form, and then the rest of it I just start adding and welding pieces to it, and I will take pictures of it and get back and look at it, and I'll just start, just forming it. And I keep looking at it, and I see something doesn't feel right, and I just keep adding pieces until I feel like it's how I want it. I don't spend a lot of I don't spend a lot of time. I actually just start on something and just keep adding pieces until I feel like it looks, like I want it, and that's it. I really don't put a lot of preparation into it.
You just kind of have to do it. You just have to create. That's
and I usually focus on one area. Like on the horse, I focused on around the nose and around the front part of the horse. If you look, that's the only part of the horse that maybe the ears that's not wire. Like on the wasp, I made a very sharp stinger, and it's kind of dangerous, and I kind of focused on that part. On the fairy, if you look at that close, I really detail the face, but the rest of it kind of fades away. Same thing with the crow, or it's actually a raven. I focused on the beak, and the rest of it just kind of fades away. And I don't like to make things symmetrical, and I like sharp edges. I don't know if you call that, I guess, not brutalist, but that was my interpretation of being edgy. It's just a little rough around the edges, and I have a tendency not to clean up a lot of the edges. I like to leave them rough and ragged. I think it creates more of an emotion,
Okay, more of a mood, yeah, for sure. Well, that said, so which artists inspire you?
Well, I have a little story about that. When I was, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I lived there until I was 13. And I don't know if you've ever visited Jacksonville. They have a park down on Riverside called Memorial Park. There's a sculpture in the middle of that park that was put there for the World War I veterans. And I remember as a little kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, my parents taking me down there, and I saw this sculpture, and I was so moved by this. I just, from day one, I wanted to be a sculptor. I wanted to do this. This is just, it moved me so much. And it's called the Winged Victory. It's a large ball, and on top of the ball is this human form with wings, but the ball is made up of parts of bodies. You'd have to see it. Look it up. Wing Victory, Riverside Memorial Park. And I have, ever since that day, kept in my mind, this is kind of what I wanted to do. And as a 14-year-old, I went and bought myself a welder at Montgomery Ward's, and I just started welding and playing with metal. And I paint. I like to paint, but a lot of times I use my painting to facilitate, my sculpture. Some of the people that have, and the name of that artist that created that sculpture was Charles Pillar. But some of the other people that have inspired me is another sculptor called Anthony Gormley. My neighbor up the street inspires me is Carrie Ann Bada. I have another friend, Ron Airbedra. I'm just fascinated with his work. He does a lot of figures, and he completely inspires me. And my father, who was an artist, he was more of an illustrator, but he inspired me.
Wow, that's so interesting, and what a great example of why arts education for children is so important, and is exposing them to art at a young age. Just, it's amazing what an impact that can have, and public art as well. So I think that's pretty awesome. I think we're about out to our wrapping this up. Grace, I'm gonna have it go back to you. Oh, you're muted.
couldn't find my mouse cursor. Mark, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I have to tell you, I was really excited about the quality of all the work in Art in Gadsden this year. We just have had tremendous shows in recent years. To get accepted into Art in Gadsden is remarkable now, with 99 works by 88 artists accepted this year. And each of your pieces were ones that stood out and spoke to me when I walked into the space after Angie and Chris finished installing. Mark, I'm fascinated with the way negative and positive space interact in your piece, how the figure seems to dissolve into space. All three of these pieces are fun to look at and make you think. And to me, that moves it from the realm of an attractive piece to a really powerful piece of art when it really invites people to interact with it and stop and look and consider it. And what a great thing to do to get lost in art right now with all that's happening in the world, these successive waves of COVID that we're dealing with. It is just a wonderful thing to walk into our gallery and interact with these. So as Angie mentioned, this exhibition is up until September 18th. The video will be up long term. We keep these archived on our YouTube page, so you can share this with family and friends, and we will continue to share this with our public. We have a wonderful group of exhibitions coming up this fall after this closes, opening in October. 5 exhibitions dedicated to women artists and women who were first or pioneers in art. The major exhibition is 4 Centuries of Creativity, women artists from the Reading Public Museum. And we're also bringing an installation piece from a nationally acclaimed installation artist by the name of Senga Nangudi, who has been very, very well known in the art world since the 1960s. So those 2 are our major shows, but also celebrating the work of women artists from the region. And we're thrilled with the uncertainty of COVID that we had already taken the approach of planning live online programming for these exhibitions in partnership with the National Museum of Women in the Arts, the Reading Public Museum, and Art Bridges. So, as well as Florida Humanities. So we have a number of different presentations that go with that collection of shows. I hope you'll join us for those. So in the meantime, we would love to see you back out at Gadsden Arts to continue to enjoy what we have there through the middle of September. And I appreciate you all again for signing on with us tonight. I hope you have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.